Kathy Garrett. Today we're going to talk about Brevard County Evaluation System for the 2016-2017 school year. Here in Brevard County, our evaluation system we call the IPIS, the Instructional Personnel Performance Assessment System. It's made up of 5 different parts for a total of 100 points. You can see there are a lot of different parts in there. Some worth a lot more than others, like the total overall evaluation is worth 45 points. Your PGP development is 8 points. Your implementation of your PGP is worth 10 points. Your collaborative and mutual accountability is 4, and your student achievement scores, or BAM, is worth 33. Right now we're going to take a minute. I'm going to let you guys sit at this table and talk with your table partners about what it is that you see and you recognize when you're looking at this evaluation system, just the points associated with each area and what that means to you. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to discuss it. Remember to respect each person's time. At the end, we will go around and we'll let each table share exactly what they discussed and what they learned at their table talk. So as we just discussed, everybody shared that at the table talk, you've got a lot of points that are really going towards your professional practice, your evaluation itself, what you're doing in the classroom. So that everyone pointed out shows that the district actually values what the teacher is doing in the classroom above all else. So now let's look at this classroom teacher evaluation overview. If you look at your tables, you've each got a copy of the rubric assigned for your classroom teacher evaluation, which, as we just stated, is worth 45 points. In each dimension, and there are 5 dimensions, they're worth different points. If you get distinguished in that dimension, you can earn up to 9 points. Proficient is 7, developing 4, unsatisfactory is 1. The 5 different dimensions include instructional design and lesson planning, learning environment, instructional delivery and facilitation, assessment, and finally professional responsibilities and ethical conduct. All of these are in line with the piece. So let's talk about the first dimension. Dimension 1 is about instructional design and lesson planning. And really, this is what you want to. This is all about your lesson planning. So as a teacher, an instructional, the number 1 instructional person in the classroom, you want to identify your learning objectives. And the best way to do that is to start out by asking yourself, what should my students know, understand, and be able to do by the end of this unit or lesson? You should be referring to your pacing guide, your standards, all of that to come up and develop these instructional design and lesson plans for your classroom. If you look at your rubric, you'll see that it's kind of divided into distinguished, proficient, developing, and unsatisfactory. So that way you can see exactly what it is that you need to demonstrate in order to get to be classified in one of those categories. So if you look at element 1, under the distinguished category, you'll see there's some key words there that really pinpoint what a distinguished teacher would look like or sound like in the classroom. And for this particular element 1, dimension 1, that would be that the learning goals and objectives are consistently clear and focused on student learning. That's really what sets distinguished apart from proficient. For element 2, it's that you're using data, regularly accessing, using data, and refining your instruction for the whole group, for your students, for individuals, everybody in the classroom. For element 3, it means you're looking at the high quality instructional performance tasks and that you're reflecting on the depth and rigor of the grade level content. So you're really delving deep into what exactly the students are supposed to cover in that class. And for element 4, you're looking at your unit's objectives and tasks are aligned to the full extent of the grade level and content, and that the students can demonstrate what they know and they're able to do. Just because you know it, if you can't teach it, make the students demonstrate that, then you have not reached that distinguished point for element 4 of dimension 1. Dimension 2 is all about the learning environment. The learning environment really just encompasses classroom management. And for here at Cocoa High, our main objective this year through our school improvement plan is restorative practices. So Dimension 2 hits on our restorative practices that we're focusing on. If you look at Dimension 2, Element 1, here we're looking at the safety needs are consistently met. If you want to get distinguished, you have to have them consistently met in your classroom. Element 2 in Dimension 2 is that you're facilitating an environment where the students are actually assuming responsibility. So they're taking on the protecting their instructional time, and they're holding themselves accountable to make sure that they're learning what you're trying to teach. Element 3 is all about the individual needs of the students, and that you're meeting those by having high quality organized time, space, and you're maximizing that learning. That's that bell-to-bell instruction piece. So that is really Element 3, Dimension 2 is bell-to-bell. Element 4 is all about how students are contributing to designing the classroom rules and their standards. And that then once they've designed them as a group, then they're holding each other accountable in the classroom. So it's not just you coming in and saying this is how we're going to behave, it's the kids coming up with their rules and their norms as a group or as individuals and all agreeing on them and then holding each other accountable throughout the whole school year. That's how you reach that distinguished part, is having the students be active in that creation and holding each other accountable. And for Element 5 in this one, that's where the teachers interact with the students, showing that genuine respect and caring for each other, and then the students do the same with each other as well. This really hits that restorative practices piece. This is where you get to know your students well. You know who they are, what they like, what they don't like. You work with them individually based on those needs. Element 6 in Dimension 2 talks about really that's when you're trying to anticipate any possible misunderstanding. You're using your well-chosen vocabulary with the students, and you're actually extending and enriching the students' vocabulary on a regular basis. Those are really that's just where you're making the content rich with your vocabulary and your behaviors. And finally, Element 7 of Dimension 2 is that you're engaging all the students in problem-solving, inquiry-based activities. And really, this is ideally where you get to that stage where the students are the ones leading the classroom, and you are taking a back seat. It's all student-led, and not all, but there's a lot more student-led discussion. You've got Socratic learning going on, all of that, and then the teacher taking the back seat, and the students are taking the front seat. Next is Dimension 3, which is all about the instructional delivery facilitation. This is your knowledge, questioning, strategies, your delivery. This is what I call the show. This is what you're doing every day. This is what you do. This is why you became a teacher. This is that everyday interaction with the students right in front, behind, beside, with. So here in Dimension 3, there are 6 different elements that cover Dimension 3. The first one, to reach that distinguished part, you really have to have a rich content knowledge. You need to be checking for understanding throughout the lesson. And you need to anticipate problems before they happen. Have those interventions ready, know what might come up, what problems might come about throughout your lesson, and be prepared for those and have things ready. Element 2, this is all about your higher order questioning. And for this to occur, teachers have to have a strategic plan for getting the higher order questions out there. You have to plan ahead of time for them. And then you have to make sure that the questioning does involve analysis and synthesis. We want those kids to be working on the higher end of the questioning. Element 3, that's where you're using a variety of instructional strategies and resources. We're not always pulling from the same book. You're not just using your teacher manual and that's it. You're pulling from other resources. You're going above and beyond. You're looking at other areas. You're using technology, and really here to get that distinguished, you want your students to be using the technology and creating and developing new things with that technology. So it's really interactive with the students, both their technology use and yours. Element 4 in Dimension 3 is making sure that you're engaging, that the kids want to be in your room. This means that there's a high level of rigor and relevance and that it's consistently challenging to the student. If you can't challenge them, they don't want to be there. If it's not relevant, they don't want to learn. These are the teachers that get that distinguished because the kids want to be there every day. Your instruction, the way you work your classroom makes them want to be there. Element 5 is your differentiating instruction. Yeah, that's a buzzword. We hear it all the time, but it is really, really important. So differentiating your instruction just means that you've got evidence that the teacher or the administrator in the room can see, that you have varied opportunities for the students to process the information, to develop differing products, and to acquire new knowledge in different ways. So you're really offering them a lot of different areas. This is where rubrics come in, group work, individual work, just changing things up, making sure that you're reaching everybody. Element 6 is all about your feedback. And this is really giving that feedback immediately to the students or as soon as possible, making it specific. You know, it's always great to say good job, but we really need to be much more specific than that. You need to tell them exactly what they did that was well, and that you're doing it in a consistent and regular manner. Consistent and specific regular manner. And it's for all students. You're not just doing it to those few. I know we all have those areas. You know, some of us always teach to our left, or some always teach to our right, or some we teach the few in the front, or only the ones that raise their hand. This is where you're developing those different ways to make sure you're calling on everybody in the classroom. You're reaching everybody. You are listening and talking and working with everyone. Next, we're going to go to Dimension 4. Dimension 4 is assessment. Data, assessments, communication, how are we working with all the parts and pieces to make sure everything's coming together as a whole. In Dimension 4, Element 1, this is really to get the distinguished rating. You need to really consciously plan your assessment. You need to set learning goals, and you need to scaffold your learning based on the student's needs. You also need to have the students and teachers analyzing data. It can't just be the teacher looking at it and deciding what to do from there. You need to have the students looking at the data and really making their learning goals based on the data. So this is where your student data chats come in, your classroom data chats, your one-on-ones, really working with the students individually and as a group to set their learning goals based on where they are now. Element 2 talks about more about your assessment, but this is really accommodating diversity in your assessment. So are you differentiating your assessments based on the content, the process, the product, looking at your unique learning styles in the room and your learning differences to make sure that you're really capturing what each student knows and not just, and reaching their goals and not just what makes it easy for you. And to be distinguished for Element 3 in Dimension 4, this is communication. Communication about data. Nobody really likes it. The parents kind of sometimes glaze over and start talking about it. That distinguished teacher knows how to communicate the data clearly to the parents and the students so they listen and they want to learn more. So this is that clear communication, proactively giving communication, not waiting for them to ask for it, having the two-way communication open between the home and the school. This is so parents feel comfortable contacting the teacher, know how to contact you, you know how to contact them. There's open and clear communication. You're providing students with the pertinent information to your child too, not just general information, but you're really being specific and giving specific information. Here at Cocoa High, one of the ways we like to do that is we have our postcards, so you can always come and get postcards from me. Personalized, send a nice note home to the parents and students. They're high schoolers, they're middle schoolers, they still like to get that nice note to put on the refrigerator. So those postcards really help out with that. Now we're on to Dimension 5. In Dimension 5, there are 5 different elements. This one is all about your professional responsibilities, ethical contact. This is what I like to say is your day-to-day housekeeping and your ethics. These are little things kind of behind the scenes, but this is what makes you you and what really sets you apart from other teachers as far as your professionalism. So in Element 1, to be distinguished, You're complying fully and consistently, those are the key words, fully and consistently with your professional responsibilities, your school rules, policies, procedures. It means you're coming to school on time, the time you're supposed to report. You report at that time. You're staying the full time. You're at meetings on time. You're consistently maintaining your reports and your paperwork. Yes, sometimes you get disorganized. Yes, things get overwhelming, but that distinguished teacher has a plan in place ahead of time and consistently maintains those records in the appropriate manner. Element 2 is you're complying fully with district and school policies and rules, and of course the Florida Code of Ethics for educators. This just means you're doing what you're supposed to do. Element 3, your professionalism. Again, that word consistently comes up, and you're consistently displaying professional conduct. And that's, of course, in school and out of school. We know that's rough sometimes, but that is what this element deals with. It also shows that you're demonstrating a pattern of participation in school, in the district. You're working on helping on decision making within the school and within the district. You're working in subcommittees, you're disseminating information when it's appropriate. So this is you being active in and around the school. Element 4 in Dimension 5 is your communication with the appropriate stakeholders. Means, again, talking about that two-way partnership between school and home. You're maintaining regular communication between your classroom and your students. You're communicating or connecting frequently with the families and the community. The community here is a real important part in this element, and that you're really reaching out to the community, not just to the students and their families. And then you're making sure that the students and families know what to expect, know what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, how they're supposed to do it. That's really, really important with this to reach that distinguished in this area. And element 5 is you're consistently providing multiple strategies for the parents at home to work with their kids. So it's one thing to say, hey, Susie's not doing her homework, but now you need to go that step further and help the parents figure out a way to help Susie do her homework, what makes it more convenient for them to make that happen. And then you're also communicating with the parents about things that are going on in the school and the community. So this is where their classroom newsletters come in handy. Having your Edline up to date, or your other websites and other professional communications, they're all up to date, and you're constantly communicating that information with parents and the students. So I don't know about you, but that was an awful lot of information to take in a short period of time. I want to go ahead and we're going to take just a 2-minute break, let you guys kind of sit there, refresh, relax, the brain break it up, get a drink, and come back, and we're going to move on to the other elements of our overall at this. That was just for our evaluation. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that quick little break right there. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about the other components. We just finished talking about the evaluation system, the dimensions, the different elements, what sets distinguished apart from our other portions from being proficient or developing on our evaluation. Now we're going to go on to our other portions of the evaluation system. There's the PGP development, which is worth 8 points. Your PGP, or your professional growth plan. There are 2 options here in Brevard County for your PGP. One is Form A, and this one relies a lot on the quantitative student performance data. So that's when you're going to look at your data. You're going to really focus on the student data to decide what you're going to focus on this year and how you're going to build your professional growth. Form B relies on your evaluation system. So on this, you're going to look at a previous evaluation and look at an area where you scored below distinguished and try and work on that area. A lot of teachers prefer to use Form B. It's a little bit shorter, condensed, easier to work with. Form A is a very long, intensive process. Both are great for your professional growth. It just depends on you taking it seriously and really looking at which one can serve you best in your classroom and where you are at this time. Once you've written that PGP development, or that PGP and you've turned it in, and don't worry, the principals and administrators will give you all the dates and when everything is due. You've got a little bit more time on that. They'll get turned in, and then there's a PGP review team here on campus. It's 3 teachers, myself included, who will review your PGP against the rubric and make sure and give you a score based on that. The PGP team scores will then be averaged. That gives you 1 score. Then your administrator will score it as well. They'll take those 2 scores, average them together, and that'll give you your full your points for your PGP development for a maximum total of 8 points. The next part of the evaluation process is the PGP implementation, and that's worth up to 10 points. And for this really happens towards the end of the year, and this is where you show to your evaluator, you submit evidence that you have tried to implement your PGP to the best of your ability. This could be lesson plans you're putting, student work. It could be something that your evaluator actually saw while they were in there, so you don't have to provide evidence because they saw it. It could be proof of your trainings or your in-services. This is everything that you're making sure that you set all the steps of trying to reach that PGP implementation and reaching the goal that you set in your PGP. The next is the collaboration and mutual accountability, that's CMA. It's only worth 4 points, but to me this is one of the most important. This is your collegiality. This is how do you work with your peers. So we've already been assigned into cohort groups and also into departmental groups. For CMA, we use your cohort group unless you've chosen to work with an outside group. And if you do that, then please make sure that you let your evaluator know who you're working with and why, what the purpose of that group is. But basically, if your peer team, and your peer team towards the end of the year will sit down and give an evaluation to each individual in their team. You'll also evaluate yourself on how you work with the team, how you work with each other. Did you present? Did you help? Did you assist? Were you working as a team and you're making decisions and working? Were you always participating in your meetings? All those scores will be averaged, and then you'll get your score, which could be up to 4 points in the total overall evaluation process. So in review, we've talked about all the different components of your evaluation system, and those include your annual evaluation, your PGP development, your PGP implementation, your CMA, and your student achievement scores for your exam. All of that adds up to a total of 100 points to give you your overall evaluation. Anybody got any questions, any comments, issues? Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions later on or one-on-one, please come to me.